My husband let me open our marriage, then disappeared and left me with nothing. My name is Emma, and for a long time, I thought my life was perfect. I married the love of my life, Oliver, and I truly believed we were meant for each other. We met 7 years ago when I was just 19, both of us young and full of dreams, and the spark between us was undeniable. For 3 years, we were inseparable friends, and then love blossomed. Oliver became my partner in every sense, a loving husband, a loyal friend, and a stable provider. I admired everything about him: his kind nature, his good looks, and his unwavering work ethic. From a young age, he had been committed to supporting his family and making a life for himself, and I felt incredibly lucky to be part of that journey. Coming from different backgrounds only made our relationship more interesting. While I grew up in the bustling capital city, Oliver was raised by the sea. This blend of city girl and coastal boy seemed to add a bit of magic to our lives. We got married just 2 years after meeting, following a whirlwind romance that made us feel invincible. My family was thrilled, but his family wasn't as welcoming at first. They saw our quick marriage as impulsive and even accused me of trapping Oliver, though I was hardly the type to manipulate anyone, especially Oliver, who I respected more than anyone else. In time, his family came around, and eventually, I was welcomed with open arms. The tension faded, and we became a close-knit family. Over the years, I built a life with Oliver that felt as steady as a rock. I managed our home, and he provided for us. I took on the cooking and cleaning with pride, and never turned down an opportunity to make him happy in all aspects of our life. I was devoted to him and our marriage, and I felt he was just as committed. We were each other's world, or so I thought. Things took a turn when I grew closer to Duran, a co-worker I had known since my first days at the hotel. Duran was older, in his early 30s, and handled the maintenance work with quiet diligence. I always respected him, but I had never felt anything more than friendly respect. However, over the last year, his life took a difficult turn. He went through a devastating divorce after discovering his son was not biologically his, revealed by a painful paternity test. His wife had cheated on him, and the heartbreak was almost too much for him to bear. Duran was devastated, and in his grief, he pulled away from everyone. For a man who had never missed a day of work in 13 years, he started taking days off, which alarmed everyone at the hotel. I was deeply concerned, and since I had worked alongside him for so long, I felt it was my responsibility to reach out. I invited him to join our work breaks and lunch gatherings, and gradually, he opened up about his struggles. We became friends, and I found myself wanting to help him regain his confidence and self-worth. In the weeks that followed, I began to notice a lingering curiosity of my own. I had never been with anyone but Oliver, and though I was satisfied in our relationship, part of me wondered what it would be like to experience intimacy with someone else. I didn't want to jeopardize my marriage, and I certainly didn't feel romantic toward Duran, but the idea took root, fueled by a sense that perhaps I could help both him and myself by exploring this idea. One evening, I decided to bring it up with Oliver. After dinner, as we cleaned up together, I shared my thoughts with him, explaining my reasons. I suggested opening our marriage just once, to help me resolve my curiosity and to support Duran's need to rebuild his confidence. At first, Oliver laughed, assuming I was joking, but as he realized I was serious, his expression shifted. He grew quiet and then angry, eventually storming off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him. I waited, unsure whether to follow, and after a few minutes, I joined him, hoping to soothe his hurt. We made up, and for a while, I thought I'd misunderstood his reaction. The next day, I cautiously brought it up again. I told Oliver that my intentions were only to help Duran while satisfying my curiosity. I emphasized that there was no romantic interest on my end and that he had nothing to worry about. Oliver, however, was firm. "If you go through with this, Emma, I'll file for divorce," he said bluntly. I was taken aback, but I thought his feelings might change over time. I didn't want to push him, so I let it be. Days passed, and then it was Sunday. Oliver was set to go on a fishing trip with his family by the sea, a yearly tradition for him. Before he left, I brought up the topic once more, hoping his time away might have softened his stance. To my surprise, he responded with a detached calmness, saying, "You're an adult, Emma. I can't stop you." He kissed me goodbye, and though I sensed some tension, I took his response as reluctant permission. On Monday, I met with Duran and told him about my idea. At first, he was taken aback and didn't want to risk affecting my marriage, but I reassured him, explaining that my husband had given his consent. After some hesitation, Duran agreed, provided that it would be purely physical. That evening, I went to his place. The experience was awkward and brief. There were no romantic gestures or emotional connections, just a physical interaction to resolve my curiosity. It didn't mean anything to me, and I felt no different afterward. I texted Oliver that night to let him know everything had gone smoothly. I emphasized that it was nothing compared to the love we shared, and I assured him that he was the only man I truly desired. But he didn't respond. That night, I couldn't sleep, wondering if I'd made a terrible mistake. The next morning, he replied briefly, saying he'd be returning home later than planned. While I wasn't thrilled about the delay, I told myself he just needed a bit more time. For the next few days, I continued my usual routine, texting Oliver and preparing for his return. I even did some shopping to cook his favorite meal, hoping we could leave this incident behind us. But when Friday arrived, I returned to an empty apartment. Every piece of furniture was gone, replaced only by a few essentials: a twin bed, a single chair, a small TV. On the counter lay a stack of divorce papers and a note. "Thank you and good luck with Duran." My heart shattered as I read the words, realizing that Oliver had left and wasn't coming back. Over the next few hours, I tried to contact him, only to discover that he had blocked my number. I called his family members, but they too had blocked me. Desperate and confused, I found a letter in the stack of documents on the counter. It explained that any communication would go through his attorney from now on, and that he had already taken care of all the legal arrangements. I couldn't believe what was happening. I reached out to the attorney, hoping to understand my situation better. He informed me that Oliver had paid the rent and basic utilities for the remaining 3 months of our lease, but that was it. After that, I would be on my own. I felt abandoned, stripped of everything I had relied on, and completely alone. Sitting in our now empty apartment, I wondered if this was how it had all been destined to end. I thought back to our wedding, the promises we had made, and the love I thought we'd shared. In trying to help a friend and satisfy my curiosity, I had unknowingly dismantled the life I held so dear. Oliver had taken everything: our memories, my stability, and the love I had cherished. Now, as I sit here, I wonder how to move forward with nothing but memories and regrets. If I wanted to stay, I'd have to renew the lease with the landlord. But how could I manage to stay when I could barely afford it? Was this how a man should treat the love of his life? A woman who gave him everything? I'd always been there for Oliver, giving him love, handling the cooking, cleaning, and errands. He never had to ask twice for anything. Now, I was left on edge, sleepless and broken. The next day, I decided to visit Oliver at his job site. He was working by the shore, a skilled concrete worker known for his talent. especially impressive for his age. I asked his foreman to let him know I was there and that I loved him. The foreman promised to pass on the message. Grief overwhelmed me. It was unbearable, like mourning a death. I confided in a close friend at work, and she couldn't believe I'd actually gone through with what we'd talked about. I only suggested it as a joke, not something serious, she said regretfully. The following day, I took a bus to the seaport. I can't drive, so it was my only option. I even visited my in-laws' house. Although they weren't exactly welcoming, they let me in, offered me coffee, and listened as I explained the misunderstanding and how deeply I loved Oliver. They were kind but firm. Oliver's mother told me he didn't want to see me again and suggested it would be best if I never contacted him. I insisted I couldn't just let him go. He was my entire world. Oliver was working about 100 kilometers away, and his family didn't invite me to stay. So I took the bus back to my empty apartment, crying the whole way. I even took time off work the next day, hoping I could somehow pull myself together. Now I need your help. How can I regain my husband's love and mend this misunderstanding? Please, no judgment, I've had plenty of that. I'm only looking for real advice on how to win back the love of my life. Update 1. I noticed some questions from the group and want to clarify. Yes, I believe in God and the sanctity of marriage. No, I was never unfaithful to my husband, and I'd never do anything to disrespect him. I'm a good girl. How many 24-year-old women do you know who have only been with one man? And no, there was no romantic attraction with anyone else involved. My intentions were pure. Some of you seem to have bitter attitudes, but it's ultimately up to God to judge me, not anyone here. Update 2. A month has passed without any response from Oliver. I've tried calling from different numbers, leaving messages, but he's screening everything. I even asked Duran to call him, thanking him for saving his life and assuring him we were only colleagues. But Oliver hasn't responded. I confided in my family about the situation, but they reacted angrily, seeing my actions as betrayal despite my explanations. They even suggested I go to confession every day for a year. I believe only God can judge me, yet it's painful to feel isolated from everyone around me. Final update. I wasn't planning on returning here, but some kind people asked for an update, so here it is. My lease expired, and I couldn't afford rent in the city. I could have stayed with my parents, but they don't understand my perspective. Now, I'm staying at a community hostel temporarily. The divorce is official. It might be the quickest one in our country's history. The judge didn't seem to value my side at all, calling my actions cheating and disregarding my intentions. Oliver denied giving permission, and his lawyer agreed. In the end, I was awarded a small settlement of 6,000 euros, a fraction of what my contributions were worth. How can women's sacrifices in marriage be valued so little? Now, I'm focusing on winning Oliver back. I've let him know I'll wait, and he's welcome to visit anytime. I believe one day, he'll come back, and we'll rebuild our lives together, maybe even start a family. Merry Christmas to everyone, even to those who judged me harshly. And now, let's move on to our next story. I was swept up in a storm of emotions, from fear to excitement. But the more I thought about becoming a father, the more joyful I felt. Driving home that night, I was overwhelmed with happiness. When I arrived, I embraced and kissed Lisa, sharing my excitement, and she was equally thrilled. As the weeks went by, Lisa began bringing up marriage. I explained that I wasn't ready yet, but suggested we discuss it after the baby arrived. She accepted that, though she continued to bring it up a few times each week, expressing how much she wanted to be my wife and spend her life with me. Over the following months, we focused on preparing for the baby. turning our spare bedroom into a beautiful nursery. I spared no expense, ensuring everything was perfect. During Lisa's 7th month of pregnancy, I decided to propose. I got down on one knee, and she happily exclaimed, "Yes, yes, yes. I'll marry you, John." Overjoyed, I suggested we have a civil ceremony at the mayor's office the next month and celebrate with a reception after the baby's birth. She agreed enthusiastically, but just days before the wedding, our baby had other plans, and Lisa went into labor. We rushed to the hospital at 4 o'clock, and by 9 o'clock, Lisa had given birth to a healthy baby boy. I was with her in the delivery room, supporting her through it. When I first saw the baby, however, I felt a sinking feeling he didn't resemble me. He had jet black hair, a deep brown complexion, and looked Hispanic, despite both Lisa and I having Northern European backgrounds with fair skin and light hair. There's no Hispanic heritage in either of our families. When the baby was placed in Lisa's arms, I saw the shock in her face, despite her attempt to appear calm. My heart raced, but I kept my composure. Lisa asked me to hold the baby, and though I felt sadness knowing he wasn't biologically mine, I held him and tried to mask my feelings. I told Lisa I'd go share the news with our families. I went to the waiting room, shared the news, then stepped out to clear my mind. I found a small park area near a stream on the hospital grounds, where I broke down in tears. My world felt shattered. I knew I would lose both Lisa and the child I'd hoped for. After about 30 minutes, my mom called, sensing something was wrong. I confided, "Mom, the baby isn't mine." Her response was reassuring. "Son, I know. I'm here for you no matter what." With her support, I collected myself, freshened up, and returned to the room. When I went back, only Lisa, her parents, and my mom were there. The baby was in the nursery, and Lisa was resting. I suggested everyone let her rest, but as we left, Lisa asked if I'd stay. I gently told her it was best if she got some sleep. A few hours later, I returned, allowing her parents to see her first. After a while, they told me Lisa wanted to talk to me. When I entered, she was smiling and asked if I was happy. I told her I was glad she and the baby were healthy, but she sensed my distance and asked if something was wrong. I replied, "We need to talk. About the baby." She looked puzzled and asked, "What about the baby?" That's when I said, "Lisa, the baby is clearly not mine." She became defensive, insisting he was mine. I replied, "You tell me who the father is." After a long silence and through tears, she confessed, "I'm so sorry, John. I was unfaithful, but I want you to be the baby's father." Ignoring her plea, I asked her again about the father. Eventually, she admitted it was her ex. They had a brief encounter in our apartment 8 months ago. I walked over to the window, trying to process everything. Lisa asked if this was the end of our relationship. I told her it was. I couldn't see a way to trust her again. She cried, begging for another chance, but I told her to inform our families immediately. Though she pleaded with me not to, I insisted. When our families gathered, I asked Lisa to tell them what we had discussed. Overcome with emotion, she couldn't. So I explained the situation. Her parents broke down in tears, and I told them that when Lisa was discharged, she would go home with them. I arranged for her things to be moved to their house. Lisa continued to cry, but I stood firm, telling her she couldn't come back to our apartment. As we left, Lisa called, begging me not to end things this way. I replied, "Lisa, I didn't end our relationship, you did. The trust we had is gone, and so is the person I thought I knew." I hung up, feeling there was nothing left to say. The next morning, her father arrived to collect her belongings. I helped set up the nursery at their home, even as I struggled with my heartbreak. Lisa's mom asked if I could reconsider, but I explained that I couldn't trust Lisa again and wouldn't be able to love a child who wasn't mine. Over the next week, Lisa called and texted over 100 times, professing her love and asking for another chance. She even suggested we could continue dating as before, but I never responded, and eventually, she stopped. This has been the hardest period of my life, though I have no desire to be part of Lisa or her child's life. Sometimes I imagine meeting him for a beer when he turns 21, to thank him for his early arrival. It spared me a marriage built on deception. To other men, my advice is to consider a paternity test before committing to a future with someone. It might just save you a lot of heartache.